Good day and welcome to the Robust Ramblings podcast. My name is Gideon Maas and I'm going to be your host for today. This is the second episode in a two-part series where I chat to Rudolph Kriek, a good friend of mine, on his journey up until coming into the real estate industry. He's a leader in different aspects of society, and I want to invite you to please go listen to the first part of this conversation, our previous episode for context, and then enjoy this one. Sure. It's amazing actually, because when you think about it, I think in our culture and context, people easily divorce ministry or your faith with work. And that's what I know you've got a passion for, is how can you live that out. I mean, we have a worldview that separates the two, but actually you are one person. You are not one person at work and another person at home. You are one person with one calling. You've got Jesus inside you that has a goal. Ephesians 2:10 speaks about the good works that he prepared in advance for you to walk in. That's been set out. It doesn't specify it was good works in church or good works in work. It's a calling that God has called you to. So I honestly want to commend you, Rudolph, on how you've taken the leaps of faith. I agree with the fact, the message your wife shared, the word your wife shared on breaking ground or building things from the ground up. You are a pioneer, and I see it in small things. I mean, the type of things you start to have an interest in, other people start having an interest in the same things a little bit later, whether it's the way you dress or style things, small things. I think God has gifted people with these things, and I can honestly see it on your life. I mean, you were one of the first of our friends that got married, first one that had kids. So it's always, I mean, you're running ahead in that sense. Not that the one thing is better, or you're not. I'm not saying, but I think it's a grace on your life. I think you were the first guy who started a business as well, between a lot of us. You figured out some of the details on how to register businesses that we could learn from you. So it's cool to see how God's been working, and even those small things have been snowballing into other aspects and areas of life. Maybe just one last question on your story. How did you make the decision to pivot from ministry to business? Like, what were the type of things that went through your mind? I know obviously there's influences from people around you. So you mentioned those influences earlier. Your parents, friends, family, expectations of people you were leading, which I can also think was maybe even a thing because, people see you in a certain capacity. Maybe there were some insecurities in your own heart. Are people going to look at me different now? Like, what did that shift look like?
Yeah, so that shift was in my own life a little bit earlier than I do believe many people from the outside saw it as. Meaning that it really became clear for me the need to really build well, so that when the day might come that I'm not there anymore or not leading the ministry anymore, it was always very important for me to leave something that can still work, not building things around myself in such a way that, okay, now I feel called to something else, it just everything falls apart. And so about and I didn't know it was going to be 2 years, but about 2.5 years before I went into full-time business, I really felt the Lord giving me wisdom on a certain structure that would really work well. And so the basics of the structure were really to build 1 or 2 or 3 leaders very close to me that really had very good insight of what ministry looks like. And those specific people were people that had, in a sense, experience in the full-time business, full-time ministry sphere, meaning that either they were in full-time ministry for a while or they were very close to people that was in full-time ministry. And so it was a good structure, and it wasn't a structure that I kind of just, sucked out of my thumb and just say, I think this can work. It was a structure that really, there were people praying with me, and it was a long time to kind of come to that point of really saying, okay, let's build it this way. And then using those kind of closer leaders and building teams around them. So like I said, when I started in the ministry, there was always a team of student leaders built around the leader of the ministry. And so I found to build a structure where there's very close leaders around me, people that also can share maybe some more detailed and more difficult prayer requests of my own life. Maybe there's a season where I just feel like I'm not very sure about the vision, or maybe I feel a little bit demotivated to pray, to do it, preach on Sunday, whatever that might have been, just more difficult things that you can't really just ask a good student leader, that you really need someone that can understand. You're not demotivated, just demotivated to preach on Sunday. There's a very big difference, but not everyone understands that difference. And so it was important for me to have people who understood that difference, so that I can call them up and say, can we have a coffee? Or can we just go and walk around the park? Or can I just come and, spend some time at your house, or whatever that may be? Have a lekker aandete. And so seeing how that structure became alive, and what that structure meant in terms of our reachability to do much more than what was previously available or previously possible. And I remember there was this one specific Sunday, we were in the upper room in the office, where we usually gathered quite a long time before the Sunday evening started. And we gathered there with the leaders. We were 4, so I was one of the 4, and there were just below 50, call it student leaders, that kind of functioned inside of this 4 leaders structure. And I had to preach that Sunday, so I remember saying, okay, guys, just fall into your groups, go to the guy you were assigned to, and then I dropped out to go and preach the Sunday. I remember walking out the doors and thinking, everyone in that room is literally the core of the core leadership of this ministry, and I'm not in that room. Like, I just left that room going to preach. I think this can function maybe in a way where I don't just leave to preach, but maybe I leave to what the next season of my life looks like. And then I had real deep conversation with people around that. At that stage, my brother went to a retreat to Hole in the Wall with quite a few, around 50 pastors, leaders in ministry. Some of them were in business as well, from another denomination, a church denomination called NCMI. And it was one of those retreats where you had to book like years in advance before you can get in. And they didn't really give too many youngsters an opportunity, because it's an international church. NCMI is an international church. And so there's a lot of leaders and lead elders and pastors that wanted to go on this retreat, spending good time in fellowship, but also resting. And I remember having a dream at night and just knowing I need to go on this retreat. And so I phoned my brother, said, listen, I need to go on this retreat. He's like, dude, this retreat is not just open for anyone. Like, it's a closed retreat. I'm like, call someone. I need to be on this retreat. And it's just like, it doesn't work like that. And I remember he was with me having dinner at my house, and before he went home, I looked at him and I said, do me a favor, really, please call someone. Like, I really feel God's favors on this. I'm not asking you to try and make something work. That's not the weight I'm putting on you. All I'm asking you is, I can't call someone. You've got their numbers. Just ask someone the following question. And he asked, and the guy was like, yes. Off the bat, yes, bring your brother with. And he phoned me, he's like, man, I can't believe that this has been approved, but you can come with us. And so that, the weeks there, I met some people that I had real good conversation with. And I remember one specific elder that I spoke even that, not just was I invited, I had time to spend with people that you don't necessarily have the opportunity to spend time with them.
Yeah, I mean, those are, in some of the cases, when we had some of the guys on the podcast as well, it's CEOs of businesses, it's guys leading large teams. And as much as you would maybe want to see a split between ministry and business, these guys are leading people. And it's actually more difficult in a ministry context in the sense that you're leading people who are volunteering, not people who are paid that you can keep accountable in the same sense, like you're going to lose your job, So now I've got context.
So and there I was sitting with some of these big leaders and having an opportunity to really just share. Listen, guys, I think God is calling me in the next season, and I just don't know how to structure this. I don't know how to go about this. And I also started touching lives of people that had real good standing in ministry. Maybe they would typically preach on a Sunday for a few Sundays in a row, or they would be the lead elder and having ministry structures, but they would spend a lot of time in business as well, which was something that was new to me. And so hearing their stories and hearing more or less what their lives would look like, obviously I couldn't have exactly perfect context. I kind of just, it rang true like a tuner where you like play the note on the guitar and it's an E string. You can tune it out, you can make it a drop D, you can do whatever you want, but it's E string. There's a reason why the nominal tuning of that string is E, because it participates well with the other strings and the notes that you will play on the guitar. And that's kind of what happened in that season. I would hear somebody say, and it would be that E sound of the E string, and I'm like, this sounds like the things that I feel God. It gave me vocabulary.
So you kind of like resonated a lot with it.
Exactly, and it gave me words to articulate what I started to feel in my heart. And as I remember asking the one guy to maybe see him again. Can I see you again about this? He was in Johannesburg at that stage. And so I drove through to Johannesburg, came to his house, and he was like, listen, I didn't know this pastor is also going to be here. I hope you don't mind. And so there was another pastor there. I don't mind at all. Like, I'm going to share some stuff that I really need your help in structuring what I believe God is calling me for this next season. And just you get these moments, divine appointments. That's the term we usually use for it. Where you just can tell that God has put people in the same room for an exact moment, or some wisdom or structure, what was needed. And that was one of those times where I sat and I spoke and I shared my heart. And I remember the one pastor sharing that he felt a few things in his own life a few years back, wanting to pivot, but then really harboring bitterness and really having the current season kind of destroy the following season. And he almost wrecked his life of faith in such a way that he fell back into habitual sin, and like it was a big deal. And I remember just being still young, be like, God, I really need to do this in your wisdom. Like, I can't just go laissez-faire about this. I was in full-time ministry, now I'm going to go in full-time business and just not count the cost either way and just be like, oh, this is easy. I came to realize with stories and people that I saw for mentorship that this might be a road less traveled by. There aren't a lot of people that have felt so called for business, for ministry, that I staked everything I had on that. And then in a season of my life where there were really a lot of momentum in ministry, feeling called for full-time business. Like, that was, for many people around me, that was like proper foolish. That was like, dude, what are you thinking?
But that's the life of a pioneer in a sense, right? You build and you create momentum. I mean, obviously through God's power and all of these things, but that's the skill that you run with, is you have to play in your lane.
100%.
And that's I think the challenge sometimes for a pioneer is not necessarily always seeing the fruit of all the effort that went in. You did the hard work, and then a new gift needs to come in to sustain that.
100%. And I think also, so that was that specific moment was a moment where I just went like, okay, God, this is what you have called me for. The vocabulary is in place. The mentorship is in place. I've really searched my heart quite well about this. I really can say that there's no bitterness. There's no leaving something. I mean, I was in the same church for 2.5 years after I positioned myself in full-time business. So there were no, I still had the privilege of having fellowship in the same spheres, obviously in a bit of a different capacity. And I remember that specific leader that I went to his house in Joburg, he also had a very, very good standing in business. His two brothers are both in full-time business. They've got family business. It's in real estate. And so I didn't even know I was transitioning into real estate as a business by then.
Sure.
And so not just vocabulary that I was given, also kind of dreams and things to pray for and trust for. Like, I remember leaving his house And I'm like, your Lord, if I can ask for things, you say in your word that we can ask you for wisdom, and that you give good gifts, and that we can ask you for anything that we need. I want to ask you for a position like that, where I have the privilege of making a difference in business, leading people in business, leading teams in business, maybe be a leader in certain spheres of the business industry, but at the same time really make a meaningful impact in the local church and ministries in and around my city. I want to ask you for that. And so I remember sharing, and it's always good when this happens. It's not always a guarantee, but it's always good that this happens. So I was sharing with the elders at my local church about the fact that I feel the transition is coming. And I remember one elder, and he was a financial guru. He still is. I remember he said, that conversation we had, because I went to see him about investments. In the same year, I went into full-time ministry, which is just, that's just, it's not, everyone's story would be like that. I mean, I'm going into full-time ministry, and now I'm seeing him about investment opportunities and the way we should think about it, and the reason why I'm saying that is at that stage, my head, my heart, my way of thinking was full-time ministry. I left the opportunities I had to go into engineering. I left business. I left everything and went into full-time ministry. And I remember he said, back then, when I heard you ask the questions you asked, I knew there was some form of anointing over business in your life. And this was the gap of that conversation was about 4 years since we had that first conversation, and then me going to the elders, asking them to pray with me into this next season of what it might look like to transition. And I remember hearing that and thinking, almost as if God opened your eyes to something that was always there, really realizing now it makes sense why God asked me so many times in my ministry years not to make business any focal point in this, to really count the cost of being in full-time ministry. Because out of his perspective, and that's what I came to learn, he that stands outside of time, he knew there was going to come a time where the season of full-time ministry would be done and a season of business would germinate. And so being then in business, obviously restructuring the whole way of your life, I came to realize I need to do this well. And so there were seasons where I felt such a draw to ministry and to really be involved in the same capacity as I were, but it was just not possible. And really feeling that I'm not doing my part, and I should do more, and coming also to miss opportunities that was just normal in your life. Having the chance to maybe preach, or maybe lead a prayer, or maybe building discipleship teams and having youngsters in your house really loving Jesus, loving life. All of a sudden you don't have that anymore. You've got business, and yes, you pray and you seek God for wisdom, but you also sit behind your laptop and you also are in business conversations that doesn't necessarily have the main goal that the local church has. There are different goals and setups and structures. And so I struggled with that in the beginning. I was very excited, so that helped. The excitement of like, I'm in this, like, yes, we've come beyond the transition. The transition was good. It was healthy. There was a lot of good fruits from that. I'm so glad for the mentors that was in my life at that stage. And I'm now in business, and like, we're gonna do it. And then these moments, maybe on a Saturday late, I remember Saturdays where the next day would be this whole church day of being involved in church stuff, and now it's just not like that anymore. And I think a saving grace for me in that season was just I had very small kids at that stage. So I've got 4 kids, and they're at the moment all younger than 6. So 5.5, 4, 2.5 turning 3 in November, and Sarah Ava just turned 1 in June. So I've got small kids. And I remember sitting with Sarah Ava in one of the church ministry moments, and everyone around me is just all the mothers of the small kids. And they're like, you're a little bit out of the rhythm. what we do is this Sunday all the men come with the kids, and then next Sunday all the mothers come with the kids, and then the fathers sit in church. And I'm like, yes, so my rhythm is this Sunday I'm with Sarah, Ava, and the next Sunday I'm with Abigail and Michael, and then the next Sunday I'm with Sarah. There's 4 kids under the age of, at that stage they were all under the age of 5. There's no, one sit in the church and can just hear the preach, and like we 2 and they 4, like we need to figure this out. And so I threw myself in child's ministry. Eventually also started leading in some manners, maybe just doing a preach for kids. And it was such a good time, just being in full-time business, but then just seeing all these kids being so excited about church and so excited about Jesus, and hear the story of Noah, and want to do their little handmade Noah ark. And so that was a very refreshing season for me specifically.
Yeah, and how do you manage? So, I mean, that you've got the most kids of most people that I know, right? And I think it's part of the legacy that you and your wife bring into the world. I think, as well as there's a strong synergy between the two of you. I've seen you guys work together. I mean, I've known Carissa, your wife, even before I was like properly saved. Also part of the children's ministry. She was busy giving to the class to the grade 7s. Her brother was still there as well. It's many years ago. And how do you guys manage that cohesion as a family? Because what I've seen in my own life, the business world can take a lot from you. I think you being part owner of the business that you're running, it's a lot more difficult to switch off. And then you've got a lot of family responsibilities at home. And a lot of people don't get this right. Now, most people probably don't get this right. You'll hear it from their children say, after they've grown up, my dad was never at home. He tried to provide for us, but I actually just wanted him to be present. He missed the sport games, those kind of things. So how do you manage the time and energy? Because I know you're an extrovert, so you probably get energy throughout the day when you're working with a lot of people, which you do. But it takes a lot of thinking, leading, a lot of capacity. And when you get home, I've seen you with your kids. I mean, you've got a lot of energy for them. You get excited with them. You shout with them. You run with them. You play together. How do you manage that?
Oh, so I have to give a shout out to my own dad in this, definitely, as a very big first step. He was in corporate and he did business very well and pivoted from there about when I was in grade 11, 12. I can't really exactly remember, started his own business. But he was always heavily involved in our lives. Always there when you had a difficult math calculation that you couldn't do, ask him, Dad, can you quickly help me? And then having supper and dinner always together as a family. So, okay, quickly go and grab it and we'll sit and quickly figure it out. Playing cricket, he would be there. And later on in life, I only realized that even some of his own colleagues and people that was maybe a little bit high in the hierarchy of the corporate business he was working in would have called him and said, where are you? Because obviously his desk was empty, but as a kid, you don't think about that. You don't think, okay, my dad is next to the cricket field, which means his desk is empty. You just think, oh, great, my dad is here. Like, I'm glad for that. So later on, I came to realize the positive influence that I had in my life. Now I'm the dad that has to make the desk is empty choice, if that makes sense. Because that is where I'm currently. I'm not the guy on the cricket field having the dad that's there. I'm now the dad that have to leave my desk to be involved. And so I remember just saying yes to that. So that's definitely a first shout out. The second shout out would be to my wife, who made a decision by herself fully and with my full yes on it to be a full-time mom. And to be a full-time mom with 4 kids, obviously that's a full-time plus a full-time job. I mean, that's full-time job and maybe a job or 2 activities in 2 or 3 in the morning when the smallest one cries for some assistance. But when you have 1 kid, it's not that much of a full-time job, because if you have 1 kid and they sleep for an hour or 2, don't get me wrong, it's still heavy and intense, and I'm not trying to take away of the physical reality of rearing children. Is just real. But I remember in that specific season, she did feel some capacity toward being able to maybe do a business on the side, or maybe do a little bit of work in the morning, but she really felt to pour every single bit of energy into being a mom, and figuring out what it means to be a mom, and being there for Abigail. So I remember the game she played with Abigail, the stimulation thing she came up with. I would come home and she would show me what Abigail was capable of doing, and I would just, I would obviously be very grateful that my little one can maybe, I don't know, crawl or whatever the milestone of the month would be, but also looking at my wife thinking, you are such a creative mom, like you are really, really helping our kids, being there for them, pouring your heart in them. And so obviously that released me in many cases. In that specific season, Abigail and Michael were both born in the season I was full-time ministry, and Lucas was born in the season that I was in full-time business, and then Sarah Ava after that. So I think that those two are definitely the biggest shout-outs. But there's also just that choice to be made. Like, you have to make that choice, and you're sacrificing to make that choice. And I think we still, as brothers, would like stop in our tracks to be able to do a weekend at my parents' place, or to go to a vacation that we can maybe spend time with them, and seeing the fruit now that they are older, reaching their 60s, and maybe going into a slower season of their own lives. And we, like, my brother is turning 33, I'm turning 31, and then the youngest are turning 26, or maybe they are 26, have their birthday in April. We're in a very energetic season of our lives. We're in the building phase. Like, you want to build businesses, you want to buy real estate, do investments, you want to like go for it, rear up small children. You're up at 3 to help the smallest, but then you're up at 7 to go to work, and you're in that season. And still seeing my brothers maybe stopping some of that energy in business and to spend time with my parents because they build a good foundation in our lives, made me realize, okay, many things in life is a delayed gratification. Like a 6-month-old baby cannot even say, I love you, Dad, or thank you for being there. It doesn't even realize it's 3 o'clock in the morning, and what it entails for a tired parent to wake up at 3 to help. All they do is they cry, and they think or hope that you are going to help them, and if you do, they go back to bed, and that's that. They don't even remember that. But I mean, science has proven that in certain senses, the small little babies that can't really even remember a few memories before you turn 5 or whatever, those building blocks and the love of a parent really makes up a whole lot of those children's personality, way of thinking, confidence, motivation, love, sense of belonging, just being able to know that they can maybe go to a parent and say this and that. And seeing that with Abigail being 5.5, really seeing that, just her just being in my life and sharing conversation. I drove from Pretoria back to Potch with her being in the front, and just being able to have conversation with her because I know her, I love her, I've got a relationship with her. And then there comes a time where it's not a sacrifice anymore. And I think time with God, reading Bible, spending the discipleship moments with friends that might ask difficult questions, marriage, there's certain seasons where it's a sacrifice. And then there's certain seasons where it's not a sacrifice anymore. And for me now, honestly, rearing 4 children, it's not a sacrifice for me anymore. I love it. I literally can't think my life out without it. I sent my brother a video 2 days back. I came home, so I've got a full day of work, stopping my car, getting out. I walk into the house. Daar's lekker Afrikaanse sokkie musiek. I think Darren was besig om te kaalvoet sokkie. Carissa has got Sarah Ava. She's singing with the song. She's 1 year old, so she's just buying on the note. And the rest of the kids are just dancing. I come home to that. Like, I open the door, and that's what's happening in my living room.
Yes.
And I remember telling Carissa that evening, I think somebody if I had to have somebody there that wasn't used to that, they would be like, did they plan this knowing that you come home? So they put on the music. Like, no, dude, this is just sometimes the way it goes with 4 kids. It's just sometimes there's just a burst of creativity or a burst of energy or like, we're all going to dance now. And then obviously there are times where it's just a burst of everyone needs to be held. And then ons het net 2 skote and we only have 4 arms. And so this is not possible now. Or maybe the 4-year-old doesn't understand that the 1-year-old still needs like full on attention because they can't really walk properly. But he feels like, but I also need that full on attention, and it's just not possible.
It's the same in business, actually, sometimes, if you think about it. People don't understand one another's context. You have to give attention to the one, both need it. It's so interesting.
So I think I would just end on just saying that I think when you come to that point of it not being a sacrifice anymore, that's sweetness. That's where and the 4th child brings a lot of that. Like Carissa and I would like literally like, no, I'll do it. Like I'll go and help, or I'll take point on this. Where I'm the first one, it's like, Leaf, will you please, like, I'm doing tea in the air, like, tap out, please, I can't. I'm like maxed out. And then with the 4th, you realize the time is short, and you realize how cute they are, and there's just some energy is given back in those really difficult moments where you remember maybe how difficult something silly like scraping together energy to get 3 young kids through bath time and having to clean them all and dress them all and feed them all to get them all in bed. And then your 4th one is there and you're just like, there's probably only an X amount of bath times that's going to be there.
Yeah.
Because you don't have that perspective with the first one. You just don't.
You're surviving.
You're surviving.
Sure. Wow, that's amazing. Yo. So some things I just want to highlight that you said. On the one hand, it's understanding what you value beforehand and then making decisions around that. I remember a conversation we had a few years ago. I think it's around 2 years ago. We had a conversation on cars, what car to buy, not to buy. And I came to you asking a few questions. And one thing you mentioned that stuck with me ever since is there's more than one currency to think in. I think you actually credited this to your brother as well, is that money is not the only currency to think in when making decisions. Time is one, comfort is one, convenience is one, family value for you being obviously something that's important. Another thing that I hear you saying, Rudolph, is understanding the season that you're in and going, for that season. I love how you said that God helped you to understand to be in ministry when you were in ministry and to now be in business while you're in business. And also you hear the same thing actually coming through with your 4th child now with Sarah Ava. It's, being present because you're there when you're there. And then the one other thing that you mentioned was asking God's wisdom and then also being obedient to what God calls you to do. And it's a marker that I can see in your life and your wife's life, and it's a beautiful thing that I admire on the one end. It's an inspiration to me, and I hope to those listening as well. So thank you for opening up some of your story. I honestly do appreciate it. And I look forward to having another chat on property.
We will do that. That will be amazing. But thanks for the opportunity. I think it's good for me also to just speak into some of these things. Revelation says that the testimony of Jesus is the spirit of prophecy, and meaning that speaking about what Jesus has done and who he is. A testimony obviously is in a sense also a summary or a plot of who someone is or what they have done. That is the spirit of prophecy, meaning that kind of prophecy is built upon the testimony of Jesus, if that makes sense. And so even in my own life, just testifying again about Jesus' goodness and in certain seasons and just the way he gave wisdom, and it stimulates the spirit of prophecy. It stimulates prophecy. It stimulates that, okay, but Jesus, you have done it once, do it again. Or thank you, Jesus, for doing it. And just the fact that I'm thinking about it again, just thank you. And thank you for being there throughout it all. So thank you for you and the opportunity to be able to go through this process. It's such a blessing. And I think to the listeners as well, really be present in your season where you are. And it is difficult sometimes, because I think, and this thing also, obviously in this, we've highlighted many highlights, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But it's life. You wake up, sometimes you're tired. And then sometimes you wake up and you're not tired. And then you pitch at work with like creativity. And then sometimes you pitch at work and you've got no creativity. And sometimes you feel like you've got a vision and you're running for it. And then sometimes you feel like whether you run left or right or up or down, it doesn't feel like it's making a difference. But it does make a difference. Prayer does make a difference. Reading the word does make a difference. Listening to God does make a difference. Spending time in community does make a difference. Being there for your child, waking up at 3 when they need you, it does make a difference. And sometimes we need a life to see the difference. Sometimes we need to live to 50 or 60 or 85 to see the difference. But may God keep it far from us to live to 85 and then see what the difference would have been.
Mm.
And that's not to put a weight on anyone. That's not to say, oh, that's just to kind of realize, okay, God, I'm here today. As long as it's called today, Hebrews 4, as long as it's called today, there's a chance.
Yeah.
It's today. There's a chance. There's a chance for you to maybe stop with bad habits, with habitual sin, with running away, with isolating. And today there's a chance of being motivated, doing business with integrity, having people that speak into your life, calling up a friend and say, dude, I haven't forgotten about you. I'm just busy. Maybe phoning up your dad and say, hey, when are you available for a lack of coffee? Loving your wife. Maybe go home earlier and just love on your wife a bit and just be there. I remember one thing that I shared, and maybe this is my last thought. One thing that I was challenged maybe in the last year or so, and it's not necessarily because I didn't manage to do it, but it was just a good thought for me, and something that I've been more focused on is, am I being as creative with my wife and my kids and my life outside of business as I am in business? Like if I get a business deal, I become motivated. I'm like proper switched on. Like maybe like having that vacation that you really need, and you're like proper switch on. You pack your bag, you like go for it, you get the trailer running, you like fill up the tank a week before, and then you have to fill it up again because you're just too excited. Like I get that excited about a deal on the table. Like am I maybe that excited with things that happen at home or things in my marriage? Am I taking that much information into other areas of my life as well? Kind of like my brother said one time, show me, it's a quote from someone else, but show me the books you're reading and I'll show you your blind spots. Like show me the podcast you listen to and I'll show you your blind spots. And really coming to know that, yes, I'm in a business season, but there's also still things for me to learn in local ministry, family, my own family, kids, marriage, and so forth and so forth.
Sure. There's a big self-awareness that you have, Rudolph, and I can still see there's a preacher inside of you.
Hey, I want to preach, man.
So, thank you very much. I do appreciate the time, and thank you for sharing your story and your family life and just everything that God's been doing in and through you.
Awesome.
I just want to say thanks to everyone for listening, and I just want to encourage everyone just to subscribe, go to our social media pages, Instagram, LinkedIn, and if you guys are keen on booking a call with us, to do a session with us and just have good chats, book a call on our Linktree link, and see you guys in the next one. Thanks.